Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Dennis Schultz with the Blacks in Technology Foundation. I am here pleased to present our host, the Future Technologies discussion with Larry Davis and Christopher Lafayette. These gentlemen are both experts in AI and XR, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting conversation. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, Dr. Larry Davis, I should say, is the founder of Exora. Exora, did I pronounce that right, Larry?
XORA, like the letter X and then ORA, XORA.
Okay, I thought I was close.
Not a
And
problem.
co-founder of Z Chain or X Chains. He holds a bachelor's degree from Florida A&M University and a master's degree and PhD from the University of Central Florida, all in electrical engineering. His dissertation topic, guided by Dr. Janet Rowland, was in tracking for virtual environments. Dr. Davis has designed, built, wired, programmed, quantified, and broken virtual and mixed reality systems. He is a co-inventor of a patented, I can say, mixed reality system that is currently licensed by industry. And Chris Lafayette, Christopher is an emerging technologist in virtual and augmented realities, applying his talents to medtech, climate, and applied sciences. He's working for a more equitable culture and technology, serving as a Silicon Valley national and international speaker, thought leader, and a culture and inclusion advocate. So welcome, gentlemen. Hopefully I did you justice with respect to the bios. So we have a few questions that I'm gonna walk through, and if anybody wants to jump in to answer, there's not going to be any specific way that we're going to do this. So if you feel you have an opinion, go for it. And the first question is, so what exactly is mixed reality? Can you give a simplified version for us who may not know so we can understand from a layperson's point of view?
Larry, please kick off.
Certainly. Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. Mixed reality is really a technology that involves content that's created digitally, but then is presented to the user in a way as to immerse someone within a virtual world. So when we talk about a virtual space, there is a continuum of how much digital information you have in the environment. So when you talk about virtual reality, everything is generated by the computer. So that means your graphics, your sounds, if you're doing, your touch and smell, all those things are done by the computer. So you're in the world and everything you see is computer generated. When you're dealing with mixed reality, you have information that's created by digital devices that's overlaid or imported into the real world. So you're seeing the things around you just like you normally do, but you're also seeing digital information superimposed or overlaid on your viewpoint of the world.
Okay, Chris, anything to add to that, or?
I think Larry just really expressed exactly what that was, almost jot and tittle textbook. I to piggyback on that, I would say that when we look at the variant difference between augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality, I often tell the two when it comes to augmented reality and mixed reality within the same wheelhouse is that think of augmented reality, but hands-free. And I would add on to that is that the idea with, and I've said it before years ago, and I made the comment after running a study, is that of the three, when we talk about virtual, augmented, mixed reality, virtual and augmented reality will have wide success, but mixed reality wins. It's where we're going to when we start to look at what is the progressive scale of this technology when it comes to the most influence and interactive computer spatial computing that we'll be interacting with future forward, especially when we'll touch on a lot of things here.
Mhm.
But those are some of the things that I tend to think about. I tend to, and Dennis, I think it's such a great question to start off this, is because a lot of people don't understand what this technology is, except us in the industry and those who may be enthusiasts or those that may interact with it on a commercial or maybe on a very low consumer index base. Because you go to the average layman and woman, whether we're talking about VR, AR, and we ask them, what is mixed reality? What is virtual reality? And say, isn't it a 90s video game? And so I'm definitely an advocate of saying that there's a lot that Larry and I will share today. But Larry's absolutely right. I think when you start to look at the technical aspect of it, I believe that is the better way to go in terms of teaching people. We want such high consumerism, and we want this global consumption. And when COVID hit, virtual is here, but people haven't even wrapped their minds around Zoom and two-dimensional environments, let alone the 3D spaces. So I'm just more of an advocate myself in saying it's to teach. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so that brings up, an interesting point. So, mixed reality versus, say, virtual reality, because everybody's heard of VR and the headsets and, Oculus and, what's more convenient? Wouldn't it be more convenient to step into a VR scenario, then step back into the real world versus, mixing everything together?
Wow. Well, I would say I would say no. You don't really want to do that. It's kind of like when if you've ever had to put something together, right? And you're over here trying to put it together, and you've got the instructions that are here, and you're saying, okay, let me go here. Okay, now let me go over here and then this. Oh, let me go here. And now let me go over here and do this. And that would kind of be the thing about going into virtual and then coming back into reality. Okay, I'm going into the virtual space, now coming back in. And I would find it a lot more convenient if those instructions were right over here on top of the task that I was doing. And that's one of the possibilities that you have with mixed reality, is that you have this ability to have direction or instruction directly in the physical environment. So yeah, physical world, digital information that's here, pointing out exactly the things that you need to do or the directions you need to take.
Okay.
And I would submit too that when you start talking about the dichotomy difference between virtual and mixed reality, those two worlds are really further apart than what most people will appreciate. Mm-hmm. Just like when we talk about machine learning or deep learning to artificial intelligence, they're under the banner of, and they're flanked by. I mean, they're very substantial difference in how they go about operating and their use cases in and of themselves. When we talk about the world of manufacturing, we'll just use the example, which I think are one of the bigger use cases, Larry, that we look at mixed reality used for, is when you walk into a manufacturing setup, into a warehouse setup or an engine or a locomotive, and you're looking how to be able to operate that thing in real time. The mixed reality 100% is going to be the better way to go. But prior to walking in that warehouse, when you want to understand what you're about to walk into, that's when virtual reality becomes your best friend. Because now you're able to train in hyper-realistic, immersive simulated environments and to be able to congregate on a collaborative scale, to be able to develop and to be able to build and work out the spaces in which you might find yourself ingressing into. So there's the difference, right, Larry?
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's almost like your completely virtual world, virtual reality, where everything is all computer generated. A lot less risk of messing up there. But when you come to the real world, I mean, now you're seeing it. It's right here with it, and your consequences are different. The interaction is different,
right?
And it's harder to do mixed reality well than it is to do virtual reality.
Okay.
That's right. I mean, it's if I could just piggyback on what Larry just said, absolutely right about consequence. If I'm a surgeon, and we've been exploring with surgeon, and those that are working in the surgical theater, You can afford to mess up in virtual reality because you're dealing with a virtual or digital cadaver or a simulated body. You can't afford, because they're doing real-time surgeries right now using mixed reality, not VR. You can't afford to be able to, because they're augmenting and projecting that injury or that disease or incision cuts overlaid on top of your body in real time and going for actual cuts. And those are with human cuts, not to mention Da Vinci machines, and start thinking about telepresence and operation like that. So Larry's absolutely right.
So you guys brought up two different use cases, one medical, one, warehouse manufacturing, logistics. What are the use cases that you see as, kind of the early adapters for, a mixed reality, implementation?
Well, you have so many places where you can kind of go with mixed reality. I think some of the more obvious places are are entertainment applications. You had people almost walking off cliffs trying to chase Pokemon, right? So you have this ability to virtualize the world around you. But like we mentioned before, just manufacturing and medicine are are two of the biggest places where we see mixed reality technology occurring. Then after that, you've got educational uses. You've got even uses where um, you're it's almost like a reference material. So if you're looking for guidance, so how to how to navigate something as well. So in general, information that that's helpful for you in dealing with wherever you are is where you're seeing these applications at.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest use cases that I've seen just from what I've been seeing just over the last several years is that your first adoption financially is going to be military acquisition. I mean, we're seeing the biggest acquisitions that are made in immersive technology in the history of immersive technology beyond, and I'll even say the failed Magic Leap experience, but we won't touch completely, we won't jump on them today. But you see military adjustments because they're looking to be able to use that type of technology with the acquisitions that we're seeing with HoloLens, whether that was HoloLens 1 and then the major acquisition that we just see with the HoloLens 2, and incorporating laser and light field technology in those lenses and wavelengths and all that, which we may touch on with the time that we have. I would say military is at the top of it. I think, but I will say what I think the more important one for me, I think in my field, is looking at the medical technology as well and how we use that in real time when it comes to the surgical theater and telepresence. But the overarching use case is going to be for early, which is the one that we're really getting at the most right now, is collaboration. I would say the breakthrough, I would say one of the breakthroughs with, let's say, Microsoft Mesh, their sole focus, and I'm not sponsored by Microsoft. I mean, I know people, there's a lot of things I like about Microsoft, and there's a lot of things I really don't care much for. But overall, I do doff my hat to the work that Alice Kipman and what they've been doing and building in Redmond and Seattle, if you will, area when it comes to the HoloLens and sticking with it. And when you see these big financial acquisitions happen, is because it's well met and it's really well thought out. Because I'm sure, Larry, you'll appreciate this. Two things: mixed reality, virtual and augmented reality. They're still in the womb. We just now developed sight. But mixed reality, with mixed reality, sight is the single variable equation. It's a multivariable equation. So now we have to figure out touch, right? Textile, tactic, and acoustical and spatial experience so that we can go into huge into high fidelity. I'll not that what's the difference between an immersive virtual space versus a mixed reality space? It really comes down to human factor development.
Yes.
Ergonomics.
Yes.
Right. So, when we start talking about, go ahead, please.
No. I was just gonna say, so that kind of brings up, barriers to adoption. We hear about, VR every couple of years, that this is the year for VR. Is it going to be the same thing for augmented reality and mixed reality? I mean, why isn't just catching on faster. It seems like there's a lot of good use cases. It's definitely being used right now in certain industries. When can I get my virtual suit and pretend like I'm in a video game? When is that going to happen?
Wow. If it makes you feel any better, I've been waiting for it ever since I was a grad student. There's two things that have to happen. The first thing that has to happen is that, and Chris mentioned this, is that we've got to get a handle on the UI, on the human experience inside of this. I love the technology. I'm a proponent of the technology, but telling me that I have to wear something on my head for 15 minutes or something, like even 15 minutes, like I don't want to do that. Uh, you're trying to tell me, like, I already have, like Steve Jobs said, right? I've got the best stylist in the world right here, right? But still
Right.
trying to interact with a virtual world, a lot of times I'm having to use an additional device that does that. And when I mentioned that mixed reality is harder than a virtual reality, is because you can't cheat your body. Your body knows where it's standing. Your body knows that when I'm looking straight ahead, then things should look like they're straight ahead. And if you don't make that happen in the mixed reality system, you're going to make people sick very quickly. So the UI has to get right, and then once the UI gets right, you've got to have a killer application to drive costs down. But all the processes are there. Like the technology pieces are here. They exist. It's just a question of how do you make this work with humans a little bit better.
To that point, well said there. I agree. It's when we start to think about human factor ergonomic entry, then we're thinking about, Dennis, psychological fidelity. There's contextual fidelity, environmental fidelity, interactive fidelity, intentional, unintentional fidelity. And what Larry was saying is you're dealing with the human body and presence with mixed reality. You are literally in real-time augmented projection, working with reality as itself and operating in that, versus VR. Yeah, we can get you to believe it mentally. There's cognition now fidelity that's out there in a high res. And even, look, with the breakthrough with what we're talking about, let's say metahumans, technology where human eye resolution face to face. I mean, it's really compelling. There's billions of dollars that's gone into development of metahumans that just got released this year. Mm-hmm. So we just now touched that threshold now. But when we're talking about mixed reality, now we're talking about holography.
Yes.
Now we're talking about, right now, let's be honest, probably one of the more advanced headsets in the world, I keep coming back to, is HoloLens, because Microsoft has the ecosystem to do it. Mm-hmm. See, it's not just, hey, we have this HMD headset, but we also have Azure, which is one of the biggest cloud systems in the world. Mm-hmm. They also have Microsoft Drive, in ODSP, and all the different, and OneDrive, all the different things that help create this collaborative tool and experience. But look, to the headset itself, and Larry's absolutely right. One, HMDs they tend to weigh a little bit longer the more that you wear them. And so that's one, having to get acclimated to it. But here's the problem that they're faced with. We have a widespread field of view glass. Mm-hmm. They still haven't cracked the code of the glass itself when it comes to wavelengths. They're like, should we go laser? Should we go light? Let's go both of them. Let's try it on this round. Mm-hmm. So everything that we do right now today, and all the adoption that's happening in XR as a whole, is one giant, massive case study.
And we're the experimental guinea pigs.
Exactly. So your early adopters are part of it.
Yeah. So
that's it. We are.
We have Microsoft that you mentioned as a major player. We know that Facebook is bought Oculus, so they're major players. And then there's Google, and with Google Glass, and who are the people who are going to drive this forward? I mean, what do you see, or are there other people on the horizon or on the fringe that I may not know of or just haven't heard of because they're working in stealth? What do you guys know that we don't know?
Well, I don't know if we know what you don't know yet, but if we look at the pattern of innovation that we have, it's just from my viewpoint, it's not going to be any of the major players. There's going to be a niche company, and it's going to be small, and it's going to scale with that application. And then at some point they're going to IPO, or maybe they'll get acquired by one of these bigger, by one of these bigger firms. But I mean, you've got companies out there that have been doing this a while, like Chris mentioned Magic Leap, um, and and they are making a product, or they're putting something that's out here, but uh, it's we're still, as an industry, we're still looking for that killer application. It's almost still like we're this solution that's in search of a problem, and we're getting added on to things, but it's not the front and center of what's happening. So it's like, yeah, I've got data and I want to see it in a cool way. Okay, so you add on this mixed reality piece here, instead of mixed reality is the solution that's that's answering the question to a problem. So as far as the players, or the companies that are there, I think it's going to end up being a small company that ends up coming out of nowhere and growing.
I would say this. When you have a deal like the Microsoft Army deal, when you're going in to billions as they've done, they're already a player on the commercial side. So the conversation is done, who's going to be a major player when it comes to, for commercial enterprise. That just happened.
Mm-hmm.
When we start talking about consumer and widespread mass adoption, and even on enterprise, the thing is this, and this is a good question, because let's look at the biggest funded startup that we've ever seen before, which is Magic Leap. I didn't want to go this route, but we are. Just for a second. $6 billion investment. Even Google put in $200 million with their own money. I mean, think about it's compelling. $6 billion investment. They come out commercially. They do exclusive contract with AT&T. Very reminiscent of what iPhone did in 2007 September, when they came out with the iPhone when it first launched. Remember, you can only buy it on iPhone. I mean, on AT&T. It was exclusive. They did the same thing. And what they did is they came out with the platform. They advertised it completely false and wrong. It's erroneous of what the actual commercials are, right? CGI commercials versus the actual experience, Larry, right? And so you see that come down the pipeline. But here's the problem. They didn't sell. They failed. They got rid of the CEO, who was the founder. They needed to do that first of all. My interaction with Magic Leap, and I said, look, we have to go back to first principles. People don't buy Simon Sinek. People don't buy products and services. They buy culture. Yeah. And Magic Leap had all the money. They had all the money you want. They did everything jot and tittle by the book. Developers and engineers and designers, but they left the marketers at home. They left the culture at home. And this is why I think it's appropriate that we're having this discussion on Blacks in technology. Because the bottom line is, if you do not bring in more culture and inclusion into your product to where it's recognizable and identifiable. Look, Marvel got the message.
Yeah.
Marvel was doing really fine. But then they said, okay, we're going to give one of our lowest production budgets to this movie called Black Panther, which turned out to be their biggest film production. And it didn't take away from their ecosystem. It leveled up their whole entire ecosystem. So when we start talking about mixed reality and adoption, who will be the people? And I absolutely agree with Larry, because you see the major ones that are coming out there, and will they have enough culture inclusion to appeal and entice the global stage? And it may be just a small outlier company working in their garage. Look, the biggest companies in the world came out of dorm rooms and garages. They're right around the corner. I can take it to Sunnyvale where Apple was made. And you start to think about these things, and what it may be a company you never know. They just got funded a pre-seed of $150K, and then they got something good going on. They get their Series A at about 10 million, Dennis,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden, 2.5, 3 years from now, completely changed the game. So I think, and look, smaller ships turn quicker than bigger ships in the channel.
All right, so let's do it. You know, Chris, you got swag. You're gonna be our CEO. Larry, you're gonna be the CTO, and you know, I'll be the hype man. You know, let's make it happen. All right.
Let's get it on, man. I'm down to break it with you, man. I'm always down to do that.
So actually, it brings up a question about technology. You mentioned Wakanda. You know, we can get some Wakanda-esque technology in the mix. That would be cool. But at the core of AR, I know that you know, for robotics, NVIDIA and their Jetson chipset, and you know, their graphic accelerators are kind of, you know, driving, leading the way for anything robotic. Is there any core technology or application or software that is, you know, essential, or is it, you know, kind of figure it out as you go and everybody's building their own, you know, customized solutions and, you know, proprietary software?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on what your company's, you know, orientation is, right? We talk about the tech that's involved with it. You know, GPUs are always going to be necessary because we have to produce graphical content. But then we have things like, you know, inertial measurement units, which are used to determine whether, you know, you're standing still or whether you're moving in a certain, you know, certain direction. And then, you know, when we're also thinking about just, you know, the you know, the tech that's there, you know, we've got the display tech too. So, you know, Chris mentioned that we were looking at different ways of producing the images that go inside of these environments, right? So are you going to use lasers? I mean, there are applications that use, you know, direct retinal laser. There are applications that, you know, we talked about holography. And when we say holography, you've seen a hologram, right? When you look at your credit card, you got the little, the dove on the Visa symbol that changes depending on the angle that you look at it. Well, that same technology can be used to produce images in a virtual environment. So, you know, so you have devices that go along with that, which are going to be key to making the technology happen. One of the ones that people were really excited about, you know, about 10 years ago were MEMS. These are just micro mirrors, just really small mirrors. And because you have a whole bunch of these mirrors lined up, right? You can use those to make an effect where you're redirecting light like a lens, because that's all a lens does. If you have your lenses for your glasses, or a magnifying, you know, glass, or a telescope or binoculars, right? That glass that's inside of there is all it's doing is redirecting the rays of light that go into it. So if you have a whole bunch of little mirrors, you can kind of do that same effect. It's like pixels in an image, right? Uh, you put enough of those little pixels together and you can make any kind of picture. Well, if you put enough of these little microscopic, like very small mirrors together, you can make them act like almost any kind of lens that you want to put. And you have to have lenses. Like if you see a projector in the theater, right, or a projector, you're giving a PowerPoint and somebody's got a projector at the front of the room projecting their presentation. You know, there are lenses inside of there. So you have to have lenses somewhere in your system to make these images appear when you're walking through this mixed reality environment. So, so that technology, whether it's laser, whether it's micro mirrors, whether it's something called freeform optics, it's always going to be a route for driving the technology that we're seeing here.
Yeah, I think, you know, I kind of brings me to some things I'm studying as of late. When it comes to the shortage that we maybe see with microchips, I think we're heading into an obstacle here. I mean, consumerism. So, I mean, look, we've become more, and I've said this before, we've become more virtual in the past year than we have the last 10. Mm-hmm. And the adoption of technology is accelerated when it comes to hardware and devices and tools, whether it's on the software hardware side, that brings us and connects us together. But all of that has to be powered by a microchip. Mm-hmm. And there's a shortage that's happening in this, and the biggest areas where we get this type of material is in Taiwan. And, you know, and a lot of it's constructed natively out of sand, if you will. A lot of people may not know that. What happens is that if we're looking at a global shortage here soon, we want to power our laptops and our devices, but now we're talking about bringing in another whole computer system entry to where we're going into, look, I'll say this, the devices that we operate today, natively and intentionally, ethnography speaking, were never for us just to continue to look at them like this. The idea was for us to be able to get inside and to operate with these devices. And it kind of brings us to very Roddenberry, doesn't it, Larry? When we're talking about the holodeck. I built one of the biggest holodecks in the world and constructed in Silicon Valley just for the practice spacing of spatialization and how we really deal with sound and spatial resonance and how we interact and get things involved. And that's more on the VR side of things with mixed reality. That's a whole different story when we're talking about AR cloud and mapping and grid systems and integrating maps and taking holography and taking different structures of glass to be able to experience. And how do you balance that imagery on any given operation and then have it operate on a point, almost point cloud precision, and then have it operate on this mapping system? Who would have thought that maps, Larry, I know you're picking on one, who would have thought that maps were as important? We tend to think maps get me to the grocery store, get me to this new neighborhood I haven't been to, but maps are one of the biggest parts of mixed reality.
Oh my goodness! Like maps and navigation. I'm trying to think what's the latest car that I've seen that has it, but I think some Fords have heads up displays now, but for sure I know BMWs have heads up displays, and so now you don't even have to look down at your speedometer anymore. You don't have to look over at your nav console, right? It's there. It's in front of you. It's like at the bottom part of your windshield, and so you're riding out, and your nav system is telling you, turn, and you're seeing the little on the screen. And in the more high-end cars, now I've only seen this like on YouTube, but in the high-end cars,
you got a couple BMWs in the driveway, Larry. Don't
yeah. So when that happens, you'll be the first to know. I will come to Charlotte and pick you up, bro. So the directions are actually being overlaid on the road. So you're driving on the road and you're seeing your arrow point on, overlaid on the road in front of you and showing you exactly where to turn. Now, for me, sometimes, the map is telling you something, but you don't really, you're kind of like, you're seeing things. You're like, I don't really understand what the map is telling me. But with this overlay, it takes it to another level. So man, like, this sensor fusion, like this is that topic, right? This is the place where if I'm going to bet on a killer app, it's going to be in something with sensor fusion where you have weather data, you've got tracking data, maybe you've got data that's being generated by a factory device on how well it's doing. Let's look back at Snowmageddon right here in Dallas. We got clobbered. It would have been nice if we would have seen the weather data superimposed with the data for the output on our generators, versus maybe historic usage, and somebody could have had a red flag and said, hey, if we fuse the sensor data, able to see it in a new context, maybe you could say, all right, let's do something about this grid. But that may be asking too much of Texas, actually.
But that's not to go understated what Larry just said also about, we've been familiar with heads up display for decades now. But when you start talking about integrating think about this. If you're driving through big rig country, I have a brother one of my brothers is a trucker in Montana. They have to learn how to drive by sight and braille on the side of the road sometimes because they can't look out the windshield. So they have to drive by, a lot of people don't know about the white on the lines of the road. You drive by braille, whether it's fog or snow. But think about what Larry just said. All right, today we have weather systems and we'll have our maps that are incorporated onto our windshields. But now we're thinking about smart windshields. And all of a sudden, what if you're driving through congested snow, but your mixed reality and LiDAR system is able to create a complete simulated perfect version, almost near perfect version of your road in sunny conditions, and you're driving by way of LiDAR and complete artificial visualization.
Yeah, I kind
That's real.
yeah, like pilots who have to land in a storm. They can't see the runway, but they can navigate based on instrumentation and displays of what the runway should be based on where they are, reference to the landing. So I get it. I still don't know how far 1,000 feet is. So when I say here in 1,000 feet, turn right. I'm like, is it this turn? Is it that turn? So yeah, apparently I need to get a higher end vehicle is what Larry's telling me. So with that, like, how real can mixed reality get? I mean, will we still be able to determine what's real and what's not real in a mixed reality environment? I mean, could your windshield be black and just project what's on the outside, in a mixed reality environment, and you wouldn't know the difference? I mean, how real can we get?
Well, I think it's a question of when as opposed to if. There's a certain resolution at which people can't tell the difference between a digital image versus a real image. And once you're able to achieve that kind of resolution in your virtual environments, then you're going to have that possibility that's there. Maybe there might be some other things in the real environment that might tip you off, but shader models are awesome now, and they're being reduced to hardware. So even if the lighting gets weird, as long as you've got some kind of sensor that's detecting that, I think it's for me, it's a question of when. Now what does Moore's law say on that? I'm not sure, but anytime that we say like we can't get to something, it's usually like, no, that's it, just give it time.
Yeah, I'd say prototypically, just from what I've seen myself on ray traced environments, and meaning that how light is actually incorporated into this digital experience. We tend to think about, from like DevOps engineers and developers and all the hard work that they do, but we got to throw a shout out to our artist community.
Yes.
That's doing the design of these. I mean, this is we sometimes, and perhaps I've been guilty of it too, we're dismissive of the importance of the artist, the designer, that are developing even low poly, high poly type technologies. And it's like you kind of think about what we're talking about here, and I agree with Larry. I mean, it really comes down to how much time, and there will be nuances that will let hey, is there a glitch in the matrix? It's like you just saw deja vu, you saw the cat pass twice kind of thing, and it's like, hey, what? But really, I mean, you start to really think about what that looks like. I mean, I have to say it again, this breakthrough with metahumans, one of the hardest things to ever create in design is the human body, anatomically speaking, in the face itself. Billions of dollars has had to go into motion capture, and we're talking about major motion capture sequences of design, and getting that and replicating that to be able to come out with a library that Epic has built. We haven't seen that. Is such a game change, right, Larry? Because with your permission to say that, I'm no longer thinking about mixed reality as mixed reality alone. I think about mixed reality under the influence of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
I think about that, and how an artificial intelligentsia can take and build and automate faster than what we may be able to do. And you start thinking about that. That's where you start thinking, hey, the acceleration point, we're moving fast, but once you really get AI modules fixed in there, natural language processing, and says, okay, and you start to configure, and we're really not that far from formulaically building that out.
Right. What
influence will mixed reality have with an extra set of eyes?
Exactly, because that just think about like our chatbots, right? Like that work as far as putting a face
Right.
onto these entities, right?
That's
Uh,
right.
w- and it's hard to do faces. It's hard, right? And thank you for mentioning the art community, because
Yes.
shouts out to the artists who are making these models for us. Because I don't know about you Chris, but I've tried to make one before and my models look horrible. Like, just is there's so much artistry that goes into it, and it's not even just like technically, right? Yeah, I know what you need to do. You put the kinematic chain together, you give it this input, and then if you've constructed your chain properly, this thing will happen. The arm will move, right? But it's so much more than that. And so the time and the artistry for doing this, impacting our faces, uh, is and then the growth of artificial intelligence into it is I mean, it's scary exciting. We've got deep fakes where you take something and you just make something up. But if you're already starting with something, you know it's a lot easier for, well, I would say this, the algorithms are a lot more tractable for manipulating something existing rather than making up something new. Um, and giving it that starting point with the face is going to be incredible, because I mean, think about what we're talking about right now. Those of you who are watching our screens, right? Why do you want us to be on screen? Like, why do you want us to have our cameras on? Why do you pay more attention when there's a face, or when there's a face talking to you, as opposed to me turning off my video and just being like, I'm a cool dude from Blacks in Technology in Dallas,
Right. Right. That's a great point. The visualization part of that too, and to kind of piggyback on that as well, what Larry is saying. I mean, think about how long it takes to create a Game of Thrones dragon.
Oh yeah.
It takes about 6 to 8 months. But two things with that: if we're talking about bringing AI involved into that, what takes whole teams 6 to 8 months to build, and you can build in the course of a half a day,
Mm.
based on the information that you're inputting and getting to that. Now bring in mixed reality, where it's saying, I'm no longer just staring at my 4K OLED TV that I just got a great deal on Memorial Day at Best Buy. I'm getting into an environment, and I'm not just watching Game of Thrones. I'm interacting with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
We
Mhm.
don't. I don't really, Larry. And if I had to be keeping, look, Jen, we don't know which way this is going to go. Really, we don't know who's really. I'm going back to what Larry said. These small teams that are out there, there's great technology that comes out every day that's almost acquisition every week. And we don't, and Apple,
Mhm.
we've never seen $2 trillion valued companies before, and how they spend money. I know for a fact that Apple has some serious lab going on right now. And the things that they're getting patents on, you're scratching your head like, I never thought that I would have, I mean, we're talking about time of flight incorporation into these are things you don't think
Yes.
about
Yeah.
commonly, right, Larry? That you think
Mhm.
that interacting with tech, but we're seeing this involved in our devices.
Yeah.
The new, and I'll say this and shut up for the moment. The new M chips that just came out with Apple
Mhm.
said we're not taking Intel's chips. These new M chips,
Yeah.
that is what I would call almost a shift. Technology moves in incrementation, shifts, and leaps. These new M chips that Apple, they just missed Intel. We're talking Intel processing, the greatest processors in the world. And Apple said, we're building that's when you start talking about how you spend your money and make something almost 10x better that quick. I mean, I've never seen that type of power, and a $1,000 computer more powerful than a $6,000 computer of the
Yeah.
same year.
I'm not an Apple fanboy, but I'm sweating the M chip.
Yeah. I was gonna say you mentioned Moore's law earlier. I think Intel was like, I don't know how we can get better, and Apple's like, we'll show you. So we got about 5 minutes or 6 minutes left according to my clock. I do want to make some time for questions, and unfortunately, I have a hard stop at the top of the hour. So let's see if anybody has any questions for the group of panelists. Just either raise your hand or drop it in the chat, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can next couple of minutes. And if you don't have any questions, I have a few more that I could ask. All right, if anybody does have a question, feel free to chime in. Okay, so next question for me. Oh, there's a hand. There we go. Okay, Morpheus.
Oh, oh man, oh my goodness. Oh Jesus.
But that's
I didn't
very
realize
but
that
that's very appropriate.
that okay,
Very
no, okay.
appropriate right
I'll
now.
be changing that. I promise. I
No,
promise.
leave Morpheus. Morpheus is cool.
Okay,
Dennis, there's a
so
lot of questions in the chat box too. I'm seeing pop up, Dennis, too.
Okay.
Sorry,
Oh yeah, let me get to those two after this one. Okay.
sorry,
go
Morpheus.
yeah, so my question is when do y'all think we'll be able to see the first mixed reality devices under $1,000, just like by year, or is this, you think it's going to be 5 years down the line, or is it 10 years down the line, or just a best guess?
Well, there are already devices. When you define what you mean by a device. Do you mean an entire system to produce a mixed reality environment, or just the hardware pieces that go along with it?
Oh, just like a consumer headsets that does mixed reality. Kind of like the regular virtual reality headsets, but a mixed reality headset, that looks just like that. But is it going to be like 10 years down the line, or?
So those are already here.
Oh, really?
The question is just how much fidelity do you want? But yeah, consumer level. You've got consumer level mixed reality headsets that exist already. You can go buy one at Best Buy.
So for mixed reality or virtual reality?
Yep. I mean, we've had commercial level mixed reality headsets for a while. So mixed reality headsets are going to be a little more expensive than the pure virtual ones. But yeah, I mean, you could already go and get them.
T had a question about deepfake AR. Could you deepfake augmented reality? Is I guess the question.
Yeah, I will say yes, because I will say yes, especially with the advent rise of what Epic is doing. I mean, we haven't even had time to talk about the threat of cybersecurity now that we're able to incorporate high-res imagery in this capacity, or this high fidelity imagery into form factors when it comes to body. I think the biggest, yes, you can. That's your answer. If it can happen on one medium of media, transmedia speaking, yeah, sure, it can happen.
Okay. All right. Sean
does exist.
Yeah, Sean had a question about getting into the industry. So new to IT, if he wants to pursue a track or a career path towards AI, VR, XR, what would your suggestions be for someone just getting in?
Okay, so we're saying just getting in, and you want to be in this space. I'd say that there are many ways that you could get in. If you're talking about the what I think is the fastest way is just through tech. A 4-year degree is not necessary, particularly if you are if you're willing to to do a program of study that will have you doing something like graphical design or sound engineering or even something is kind of tangentially related to almost to game programming, right? So it would probably take a couple of years to skill up if you're talking about being able to create the components that go into those environments. If you want to be involved with more building the entire system, that's probably going to take a 4-year degree at this point in time. So a degree in computer science, but depending on the school that you go to, it could be a degree that's specifically in virtual environments or those fields. And then if you're talking about down deep under the hood, then you might have to do some graduate school if you're really getting in deep theoretically. But I'd say, a couple of years of environments and programming experience and working with it, and you should be able to do something there.
Or the flip side of that is doing what I did in Silicon Valley and move out in the hacker space and live out of your car and learn by osmosis. Not necessarily the preferred recommended way. I think Larry's is a little bit better and more prudent.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add, there's always self-learning too, and
Yes.
now if you, kind of to Chris's point, if you can learn and have the practitioner level skills, you can get in with one of these companies and find yourself on a project to, work on the Halloween's team. You can, if you're consistent and persistent enough, you can find your way to the career that you want in tech. There's enough companies out there. And if it's not the company that you thought you were going to work with, there's going to be dozens of companies that spring up that, will look for your skill set if you have it.
Yeah.
And you really can't, go ahead. I was going to say, you really can't learn a lot of what we're talking about here, honestly, in school, because the tech moves so fast. They don't have enough time to be able to incorporate a doctrine or development process and content based on some of the things that Larry and I have shared.
Mm-hmm.
This just comes with that growth naturally in real time.
Right. And to piggyback on what Dennis said, start doing something. Like, don't let any of this, I'm new to the field or something, stop you from doing something. Do something. Pick if you're trying to do the internals, pick a game engine and start. Unity is something that's very well known and utilized all over the place. If you're interested in devices, there are SDKs that you can just learn, software development kits that you can learn to use to interface with these devices. So just grab something off the shelf and start doing it, because a lot of this is experience. Just
in your community, you're sitting in Blacks in Technology community. They have Blacks in Technology has a wealth of people that are in XR space, I know. And I have a platform, Black Technology Mentorship Program, where we just help give people advice on what exactly there is. Can we connect you with Microsoft Mesh SDK? Yes, we can. Can we connect you with Facebook Reality Labs to get involved? And it's all free. Our communities are free for you to join. And this is why we do this, because we care about our communities, and especially our underserved communities. And we want to make sure we're giving you information. And, we don't necessarily look like the people on the Apple commercial, but, with Larry, and thank you for his service, what he's done in military, there's backgrounds here. Then what Dennis has done in technology, there's a lot of people in your community that can help you and get you where you need to go.
All right, thanks, gentlemen, and we are right at time. I do want to thank you all for attending, and this will be posted. So if you came in a little bit late, you can catch the full conversation on our YouTube channel. You can get to the link from our foundation.blacksintechnology.net website. And we hope to see you at the next event. Have a great evening.
Take care, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye, folks.
Bye.